everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. And today we are joined by one of my personal favorite artists and creators, Tailsteak, the creator of Leftover Soup. If you never heard of this, that's partly on my fault because we never did an episode on it. I wish we had. It's one of the ones that you just never got around to, but I think everyone should get a chance to check it out. Say hi.
Yeah, better late than never. Hi, everyone. My name's Tailsteak. I am a cartoonist, and yes, I did leftover soup.
I should preface this by saying that it's been like 2 years since I've actually uploaded a video, and I kind of wanted to do this here and now because it kind of coincides with a personal project that I have that's about to reach its anniversary. And to talk about that, I would have to talk about one of the biggest inspirations that kind of brought me into making that. Because one of the biggest flaws that I have, I know it feels bad to uh, self-relate like this when in an interview, but one of the biggest problems that I've ever heard of the things that I do is that I tend to overcompensate with dialogue, where panels are just stuff where like 80% of it is words and the bubbles will overtake everything. And someone asked me why the hell do I do that? Like why did you do that? It's this man right here. I'm throwing him under the bus. Tailsteak loves his dialogue, and
Fair, fair.
it's great though. It's so good. It's one of the best. It's one of the best aspects of leftover soup, in my opinion, and why I think it's like one of. I It's a personal favorite. I'm not gonna say it's the best because I'm sure that, well, for one, that's such an ambiguous sort of statement to say that something is the best in what regards. But in terms of like personal favorites, like that is there just because it is one of the best things about it that I always like to tout is that it is a pure character dialogue driven sort of comic, and it's playing with the chemistry and stuff. It's just masterful, and the way that on the surface it's so dry and, dare I say, boring, but the characters kind of make up for that. And since I have you here, I just want to ask, like, how did you even come up with that sort of idea for storytelling, so to say, for your webcomic?
Well, to touch on something that you said earlier about why my comics are so verbose.
Oh, that's a better way of saying it. Thank you.
Well, I am a writer. That's just it. Is I am naturally a writer. It is natural to me to write stories. It just happens. I sit down and it comes out of me. But being a web cartoonist means you also have to generate images. And
Yes.
I am not naturally a visual artist in the same way that I am naturally a writer.
Mhm.
Writing naturally happened for me. Cartooning took me years and years of forcing myself to do something that I am not suited to and that I am not trained for. The writing, you're watching, somebody fluent. The art, you're watching a bear that's been trained to ride a unicycle. Okay?
Mhm.
And it's astounding to me that over the course of the decades of doing this, I'm now at a point where people are paying me to draw, which is ludicrous.
Oh
Um,
shoot, that reminds me. I should probably I need to pull out the one commission I got from you. I'll need to remember to self to put that in the this video. Sorry to cut you off, but
no,
actually
no,
I
no.
did want to that is one thing that I do want to touch on because that is something that I really noticed and kind of admired about Leftover Soup for its writing, just because it's like you said, it feels fluid. Like
Thank you.
it's impressive how there's so much structure in Leftover Soup that goes into it. Like there's unspoken rules almost. Like on top of just the fact that everything has to be the 2x2 window pane paneling, We're not gonna ever break from that. We're not gonna do anything fancy. Um, but somehow we're going to have, and every each page specifically has to have like something interesting, something to that they're saying. Every, even though it's only 4 panels, each of them are currently building towards the end of the page, and even in just a page, it and the other rule is that each page has to have a joke or something at the end, something to make it feel satisfying, which I mean, I feel like a lot of artists and webcomic artists, especially, tend to do is that it's something I criticized with some other people, where pages tend to be more about pacing, or it's just there's kind of a lack of focus, and they're seeing the scene and not really isolating page by page, which is almost unfair with the medium of webcomics, since it's a medium unlike any other where you have to upload page by page. So making each one satisfying or interesting is something that is often overlooked and very underappreciated. And I just think and so yeah, I think yeah, it's great focus from your part.
Yeah. In terms of the structure of it and the reason why it's always in the same exact structure, uh, it's like a haiku.
Mm.
Like the structure of it, like if you can force yourself to think within that limitation, I think it does breed creativity that would not otherwise be there.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
will push back though. There is exactly one place in the archives where it breaks the 4 panel format.
Was there a splash page I'm forgetting?
No, not until the epilogue, and that doesn't count.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, no, the comic in question is when Ellen is coming to pick up Max and walks in on the aftermath of a party and then
Oh
decides
yeah.
to leave and go to the gym without her. Ellen's speech bubble passes between 2 panels.
Ah, okay. That's as that was as quirky as we get, but I still remember that. That's the one that leads into her training with that other guy, right? With the
Yeah, yeah,
strangler
it's
guy.
where she gets hit on by another guy at the gym, and it's particularly skeezy because she can tell that he's been watching her, and yet
Yeah.
he only hits on her today, the one day she comes to the gym alone.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings into one of the things that Leftover Soup does a lot, and it's what's influenced me the most, and it's also kind of it's an understated part of the comic that in for a lot of people, I'm sure it would feel like a negative, but for me, it's what sets it apart and really shows like where its strength is. And the thing with Leftover Soup is that there's a lot of conflicts and things like that. For instance, with the creep at the gym here,
Mhm.
but all of them, they all tend to just end with the characters talk it out. They work through their feelings, they understand their others' perspectives, they find compromise or understanding. And I remember there was an author's note for that scene where it kind of culminated into Ellen punching the guy in the face and then walking away. And
Mhm.
then, like, edited in the author's notes that no, she comes back and then she talks.
Yeah, I remember at the time for that particular storyline, as she was walking away and she overhears him like crying in the lobby
Mm.
and she's leaving. I had people comment and contact me and say, no, please don't go back and talk to the pickup artist. Please don't build sympathy for the pickup artist. Please just let him be the bad guy because pickup artists are bad guys and I don't want to think further than that. But I think that
Uh,
that storyline is important because she does come back and she does talk to him and she does like dive into, why are you doing this? Why are you like this? You're
mm,
doing this wrong. Let me show you, here is a better way to be a human. And I do think that the punch in the face, as you said, was, you know,
it was
important.
valid,
That
or
that
yeah,
needed
and
that needed to happen, and it was correct that that occur. But at the same time, like,
it's not
no
something.
villain, no monster is ever not a person. No real
Yes,
monster ever truly is just a slavering beast who must be put down. There is always a human at the core. Now, whether it's worth it to try and save
yeah.
that human at the core is another question entirely.
That's the personal judgment. That's where your call comes in. But
But yeah, that's absolutely something that I wanted to get into with Leftover Soup. A lot of the exploration of the comic and the importance of the characters and the way that they interact uh, is, I mean, it's the same thing, the same reason that a lot of humans interact with different humans from themselves, is to find out, okay, how do you work? What is
mhm.
the contraption behind your eyes, and why is it whirring the way that it does? If I know how you work, I can put in input that will hopefully give the output that I want. And then likewise, I'll tell you how I work, and then you can put in input that will hopefully help me give you the output that you want.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, especially in maybe current climate, whatever. But
Mm,
I feel like that's a message, or that a lot of people just that we don't really see often enough, at least, of kind of evaluating. And I think this is also what goes into the core strength of Leftover Soup, which is that it is so realistic in that way of, there's no clear cut bad person. Even
mhm.
well, okay, there are some people that you'd be like, okay, they're bad, I don't like this person, but they're still a person at their core, and they're always going to be. And
Yeah.
and as long as we have that, you can always work with that. Shit, there was my brain is frazzled. What was the last part that you were saying?
Um, well, I was talking about figuring out how the machine behind someone else's eyes
Mm,
works. And this is not to say, again, that violence is never the answer or that some people are not irredeemable. I fully believe that,
yeah,
if you encounter like a Nazi serial killer or something, don't try and negotiate with them.
yeah, of course, yeah.
But at the same time, uh, it is the very hallmark of fascism to dehumanize the enemy. As soon
Mm,
as you start thinking, oh, these are the bad guys, they are robots, they're NPCs, they're rats, they're dogs, they're demons, the only solution is to take them out, like, you yourself are submitting to a form of fascism because it's all about demonization of the other, right? You
yeah,
have to accept this is a human being, and it might be a human being that you do have to punch in the face, but it's
yeah,
still a human being that you're punching in the face.
yeah. I think the the overall idea that of I come to is that, and I think, well, it goes both ways really. If there's someone, it the greatest atrocities that you can do to another human starts by seeing them as lesser or greater than human,
Hmm.
when really everyone is just human. And that kind of goes into, and of course that circles into like kind of the big core around all of the characters of Leftover Soup. One of the reasons that I didn't I was kind of hesitant about showing it was more so that like there's so many characters in this comic, and some of them they are very polarizing characters. Like on the
Mhm.
surface, like you can, and you probably know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
uh,
assure you, I have heard the comments,
I,
and
I'm
also,
sure
if I
they
may be
exist.
frank,
Yeah,
like the comic started in 2010. As of time of recording, a decade and a half ago.
yeah.
Some parts of it have
We did
aged
not
better than
expect for
others.
certain parts to be relevant in certain ways. Okay, that was not planned, but
Hmm.
uh, but no, um, but characters like Lily, like who's
Hmm.
this outspoken, just out. She literally calls herself a misandrist, which
Yeah,
I find
yeah.
funny, like, but who is a hardcore radical feminist with
Hmm.
a oh my god, I'm just thinking of her role-playing game where she has the men as bots and breeding stock. They're like, what the hell are you doing, Lily?
Yep, yep.
Like, it's so great. It's so but the fun thing is like you have the yeah, she has these extremes, but still you kind of and I think this is the credit to kind of your method of writing and kind of the message the overall message of leftover soup be that this character, even though she is like this and she's still like this like pretty much throughout the entire story,
Uh-huh.
she's still a very she's still a likable person. Like you can
Yeah.
definitely see her even in like different scenarios or things like that when she like you can see her in other situations where you're like okay, I can understand like you're not the problem is in the hands of a lesser writer, like there's ways that this character could easily just be the worst in the whole thing, and you're just like rolling your eyes and dragging your heels like okay, when the heck are we going to get past this scene? I don't want to hear Lily talking about her set anymore. uh but like the fact that I wouldn't say that she's necessarily a three-dimensional and complex character because I feel like that's such an overused kind of overplayed kind of
Well, I mean, you're
saying.
correct though. Like
Yeah.
the important part of any of the characters in the story is to show them having more than one thing. Like this was
Mm.
important to me with the introduction of Max.
Oh
Max
yeah.
is very much a hedonistic, everybody should
Lo-
be happy as much as possible. Everybody should have sex with everybody else as much as possible. She is a proud nymphomaniac. She absolutely is. I mean, that's right in her name, Max. Like she
yeah.
doesn't do anything halfway. Every dial of her life is turned to 11. She's not just a vegetarian. She's a vegan. Like etc. Like
Yeah.
everything she does to extremes. But it was important to me that when you are first introduced to Max, she isn't doing that. She walks in on Jamie, who at
Yeah.
that time is an unfamiliar man to her, who is in her friend's apartment, and she immediately sees him and is like, I might need to fight off a home invader to save my friend. And that is the introduction of that character. And that was super important to me because if you had started the story with, hi, I'm a happy go lucky nymphomaniac, she would be one dimensional. But
Mm.
you start with the equivalent of the save the cat scene, if you will. And yeah, from there, you can then add on personality traits and backstory and whatnot. And
Yeah.
like that is the foundation, and you go from there and you add other things on rather than just multiplying the existing thing that she is.
Yeah. Exactly. And by the way, I glad you brought her up because Max is always is my favorite character in the whole series. Like always been my favorite. She's so great. I love her comedy and her personality. Like she's another character. It's kind of like what I was saying about Lily. Like it, on the one hand, like, yes, you can look at these characters and they're like, you could see them as almost typecast as one thing, like
Mhm.
Lily as this hardcore feminist. Is it Rose? I can't remember. I think it's Rose. I can't remember her name. But the hardcore Christian, Max
Gina.
is Gene. Ah, damn it! I can't
Yeah.
forget things.
I
I
mean,
looked it up.
technically you got the first letter right because it's rarely used, but her actual name is Regina. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody calls her Gina.
Yeah. There and but kind of the thing is like it's what you're saying. Yeah, you have these. They're almost typecast, but they do feel human in
Hmm.
their interactions, and it goes into this was the point that I was trying to search for earlier, which was that there's always this kind of compromise and comparing of ideas, and that's
Hmm.
where a lot of and it's kind of why like leftover soup is almost a hard to recommend comic just because you can't really tell someone like, oh yeah, what's the most important thing about this story? What's the interesting parts about this story? Oh, characters exchange ideas and they learn and grow and build each other up by exchanging their
Yeah.
values.
like
It's
like like
like,
in the
oh
in the
yeah,
center of the story, in theory, there is like the core of the Gobstopper. There is, in theory, a murder mystery, but the vast majority of the story doesn't give a shit.
yeah,
It's
the
just like,
murder
hey,
mystery is honestly, it's kind of like, oh shoot, right, that's still fuck, right, yeah. Like one of the most hard hitting. There are two hard hitting moments in Leftover Soup that like to me just that really sticks with me, and one is the kind of Jamie going to jail bit, like one of
mm,
the few like wordless pages where Jamie just looks at himself and he's like, I can't survive in jail. I'm going to die. This
yeah,
is the end of my fucking life if this will literally ruin me. Oh God. And Ellen's just like, ah, like it still holds to that like the previous page. There's still the joke, there's still a laugh, but you're like, oh yeah, yeah, this shit, this still this is still a real thing. The second one is more of a a personal, just kind of a guttural fear, and I'm sure you have to have some. I can only imagine the feedback you got when this happened, where Ellen is playing a game and she just accidentally rolls over the hedgehog. Uh,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like anyone who's owned like small pets or something like that, you know that fear. It's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, yeah, and I did not hint that that was coming at all. Like,
Oh yeah,
I
no.
put out like promotional stuff at the time, and I was like, "Hey, here's the new character. It's going to be the mascot for the strip." And
We
then
didn't have a trigger warning on this one.
yeah, then Pinball the Hedgehog doesn't last 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's tragic and it's painful and it's really an intense moment,
Yeah.
and it's something that the characters have to deal with, and it also shows uh the character of Max, for example, and what her priorities are, because she doesn't want to see this animal suffer even in the last moments of its life.
Mhm.
And that, as I said, is her core. She is fundamentally a hedonist. She is all about maximizing pleasure, minimizing pain, and to her, like, she's a vegan because she does not draw a distinction between human beings and animals.
Mhm.
And she, in that moment, is like, I need to ease this creature's suffering in the last moments of its life. So she grabs the spray cheese, which I had set up earlier, was beside Ellen's desk because you remember she was eating the dry
Yeah.
ramen brick with the spray cheese.
Oh, it's a
And
classic. It leads into like the first moment of Jamie's autistic cooking skills.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then Max grabs the spray cheese and like tries to huff out nitrous oxide so she can like breath of life it into Pinball's nose, so that his last moments he can at least like go out peacefully. And that's her. That's the only incident in the whole strip where she violates her own vegan principles, because she does like get a little bit of the cheese in her mouth, but to her that's less important
Yeah.
than I need to ease suffering in this moment, and the hedgehog, even in its last few seconds of life, is more important than her.
And it's honestly, I didn't even realize that like reading it, but it because it is such a high emotional moment, and and another thing though, like whenever I think of that whole scene, it's like talking about like a movie or a TV show. Like you think of like all these high point moments in these media, and one thing about webcomics and about that also leftover soup, I think, also kind of does is has a it still has such a good balance of it, because even still during these this big high strung emotional moments, there there's two of my there's two of my favorite jokes in this scene. There's for there's the one where Jamie comes home and he is like, because he was the one who wanted the hedgehog, and Ellen's just crying over it, and he's like, why did you kill the hedgehog? If you just didn't want it, you could have just said so. Like, god damn it. And that's and also where Ellen and Max are kind of talking it out, and they're trying, and Max is rightfully fucking chastising Ellen for being a neglectful owner,
Mm-hmm.
and Ellen's trying to rationalize it, and they're trying to figure out like what it is, and then they suddenly start breaking it down into D&D terms, and I can't remember his name, but one of Max's boyfriends at the time is also there, and he's watching this with Jamie, and he's like, "Are you?" He asks Jamie, he's like, "Are you getting any of this?" And he's just like, "Sadly, I do."
Yeah.
That I
That was
use that panel so much. It's
Yeah,
great.
it's Trent, and that
Yes, that's
ties
it.
into something that again is very important to me, and is actually one of the things in something that I'm currently working on. I mentioned, again, bringing it back yet again, the idea of understanding the mechanism that drives a person,
Mm,
and one of the reasons that I love tabletop role playing games and things like that is it gives you a framework to quantify and enumerate and express the way that a human works.
mm,
Like in D&D, for example, you've got your 6 stats, and you can say, okay, I've got skill points in this, but I've got stat points in that, and my alignment is this. And you can form a picture of what a human being is. But there are other role playing systems that use other types of stats. And I think that it's illuminating to be able to express the same person in different frameworks and say, like, okay, here's one way of looking at them, here's another way of looking at them, here's another way of looking at them,
mm.
because like the more angles you can get to understand a person, the better you can dive in and like really sink your teeth into what it means to be a person at all. And I mentioned my current project. I've got multiple things on the go, of course.
Okay.
My current web comic is Forward, and that is dealing with a sci-fi future in which it's just recently sort of come to the point, if you will, of Forward, which is that it's going to be largely about AI rights and
Mm.
AI becoming recognized as people, which I did not realize when I first started Forward was going to be such a hot button topic now.
Yeah. Look,
Because
we weren't. This wasn't as big of an issue when we were talking about data, But
yeah. But that's very important to me because a lot of sci-fi that tells that kind of story, they just use it as a metaphor to rehash civil rights. It's just
Mm.
like, oh man, the android has to sit at the back of the bus and use a different drinking
Yeah.
fountain. Makes you think, doesn't it? It's like, no, no, it doesn't make me think. You're not talking about robots. You just painted a black person chrome. Stop it.
you, you, you've chrome painted them. No, chrome washed
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to actually, with Forward, dive into the question of, well, what is a person? When we do have to deal with AI that is not the current horse shit being shoveled at us, that's
Mhm.
just autocorrect that plagiarizes, I'm looking at you, like hundreds of years in the future, when we actually have real human level artificial intelligence, how will we determine what is or is not a person? Because it can't just be based on total amount of intelligence, right? Like it can't just be
Mhm.
based on number of calculations per second. So you have to dive into the real questions of what does it mean to be a person? And that's what I really want to get into. And one of the other projects that I'm currently working on, more or less against my will, my muse has got me in a chokehold, and I'm trying to write Forward, which is what I should be doing, and it's making me write this instead. Is I'm working on this big long ass fan fiction
Ooh.
that's set in the world of a video game. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Disco Elysium.
I've heard. It's one of those games where, like, I don't know if anyone else does this, but you ever like a movie gets recommended to you by like everyone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's so good, it does this and that and this and that," and you hear it enough times, you're like, "Oh, that sounds great. I should watch that." And then you hear more people talk it up, and you're like, "You know what? I probably should. I'll probably
Yeah,
wait on
yeah.
this." Yeah, that's
No,
my
no,
feelings with Disco
absolutely. No,
Elysium.
I
It's hit that.
completely get it. No, no, I have heard people say that the Disco Elysium fan community is kind of like the political version of Rick and Morty fans, like yelling for
Yeah.
Szechuan sauce. We get annoying, I understand. And I get obsessed about it. And but the reason that I get obsessed about it is much like Baldur's Gate, for example,
Mhm.
Disco Elysium is a computer game, but it's based on a tabletop role playing game. So bringing it back to the idea of stats and enumerating a human being with a couple of integers, and what does that mean for your understanding of what a person is?
Mhm.
And a lot of like Disco Elysium fan works will very often focus on just the emotions of the characters, or let's face it, just ship the main two characters together.
Everyone loves it. We can't. That's the backbone that gives in the money. Okay, it's the
Yeah.
hand that feeds. We can't bite it.
I mean, there was recently a big poll on Tumblr of like most popular man on man ships in the fanfic community, and the main characters of Disco Elysium came second after Kirk and Spock. Okay,
Oh.
so that's how popular that ship is. Okay, so but yeah, no. In contrast, the thing that I'm writing, again against my will because my muse has got me in a headlock, uh,
Yeah.
is it rather than explore that side of things, I want to dive into the idea of what does it mean when you enumerate a human being, and not only a human being, but all of reality based on just a couple of numbers and a couple of stats.
Mhm.
And what can we derive based on that? It's less of a fan fiction and more of a Adventures in Mathemagic Land, as the main character just explores the outer edge of what does it really mean if there's a number that's your intelligence, you know?
Yeah,
And yeah, yeah, and I that's always been something that I'm curious about is my background for making games, and Jamie in Leftover Soup is constantly making games and actually puts
oh
on a
yeah,
little workshop for Max of how to make a role-playing game.
oh yeah. It's one of
Uh
my favorite arcs. It's awesome.
Thank you. And they actually do make a playable role-playing game, and it becomes available. It's linked. There's a PDF for the document.
Okay.
Um and yeah, it's the question, like my background is in homebrew tabletop, and I have made a lot of mistakes and I've learned a lot of lessons about what makes a good tabletop role-playing game and how do you create a system that is balanced but that will let people do what they want and will express what happens in the environment.
Mm.
And I'm constantly thinking in those terms. Like literally, I will walk down the street, and in my head, I'm being like, okay, this is. I'm just now making a perception check, and I noticed that thing,
Yeah,
right? But again, you want to have multiple different systems in mind because life is not D&D, but the more lenses we get on reality, the closer to an accurate picture of that reality we can get.
yeah, exactly. Just so that we can touch on it, I because again, it's one of my favorite jokes in the entire comic. Is that and it goes into sort of what we were talking about of characters working off each other and that chemistry sort of being the core appeal of Leftover Soup and
Mm,
this writing. That the climax of that arc being that Ellen, who can't help but break every game that's put in front of her, does so in Max's game. And there's this moral conundrum of, hey, she worked really hard on that. That was a really great part, and you're kind of shitting on it, or that Jamie has with, or Jamie's telling Ellen, of course. But
mhm,
then when Ellen apologizes, Max just plays out like, "Yeah, of course I knew that because you're my best friend. I knew that there was no clear out. She didn't know what the ending was going to be, but she knew that somehow, some way, Ellen would figure out a way to solve this puzzle
mhm,
that no one understood. It goes into an aspect of storytelling that of character writing rather, that I think a lot of people can learn from Leftover Soup and just take into account is the fact that it's characters that understand each other, and it really does feel like there's history. That's something that I don't think a lot
mhm,
of people. It's hard to capture, of how do you explain that we've basically just been introduced to these characters and we're told that they have this backstory. We are told that they're best friends, but they don't really show it for other things. I'm sure
mhm.
you can think of a number of stories that do that.
Oh
And
yeah.
somehow, but the chemistry of the characters really shines in these moments and in
Mm,
those aspects. It's what makes them into feeling more like a character. And one thing I do want to point out, and it helps me understand more why this is, just the way that you describe kind of working, role playing games and that sort of thing, and the fact of trying to quantify reality. It that really does explain why Leftover Soup, more than any other webcomic, any other piece of media or story that I've ever heard, it is to me the greatest or most purest slice of life that is out there, because it truly does something that I don't think that a lot of people. I have yet to really see that often. For one, the fact that it's not just a slice of life; it's a slice of life that's about adulthood, and not
mm,
just like being an adult, growing into an adult. No, these are post college, still young adults, but they are adults. They are active. They have careers. They have their own lives already. Have a good portion of their life is already gone in, and then they have their own backstories, but they're not necessarily. But it's not played like it's a plot point, right?
Mhm.
Like Jamie getting into a car accident and his ex, did she, was it that she took her to the house, or what was, I can't remember.
Uh, it was like he got into a car accident, and his lawyer basically put him in a cast and a neck brace in an
Oh yeah,
attempt to um, like
try
he
and
he
get
wasn't
some extra money from it.
he wasn't even driving the car at the time. He was in the back trying to get something out, and someone else backed into him, and he rolled down off of the parking space and down a hill. Um, and then his lawyer, whose tagline is, you don't pay me, they do, proceeds to get the maximum payment, settle out of court without Jamie being present, which Jamie had signed off on him doing, and then was
Yeah.
like, well, okay, I've settled, and that's my fee. Thank you, goodbye. And and so Jamie gets screwed. And a big thing in the comic throughout is Jamie consistently getting screwed. Like
Oh
he
yeah, it's great.
absolutely gets shit on, like time after time after time.
Oh, the
But
lawyer character is
uh-huh.
so much fun, and also, uh, also the fact that it you're right, he does get screwed. And it's kind of it is a running gag. But what's even better is when he does sometimes screw other people.
Hmm.
like like the lady cop a
Cheryl.
yes,
Yeah.
with Cheryl, where he's when he gets um mugged, and there's a gun as evidence, and they're like, okay, you have to take, here's all your belongings, here's the evidence, here's this gun that, he's like, that's not mine, that was the robbers. And there's this whole kerfuffle about him, and Cheryl's outlining that, hey, if you take this gun, we're gonna put you back in because you need to have a licensed holster for this gun. You can't be just carrying it around, especially in a police department.
Yeah,
And,
like
and
you would technically be brandishing a firearm,
yeah,
and no, I'm not going to give you a holster. And in Cheryl's defense, yes, she's pulling some bullshit and trying to entrap him just to get him back behind bars. But as
as far
far
as
as
she
she's
knows, yeah,
concerned, he is a violent racist mugger. She thinks that he's the one who mugged the other guy,
yeah.
and like
Partly
is
because Jamie is just that socially inept, but
Yeah.
yeah,
And she's just like, well, I can't get him for the thing that I know he did, at least not without holding him in custody and trying to get more evidence out of him or get another confession out of him. All I need to do is get him back in our custody for a bit. And she's just trying this desperate gamut. Now, is it unethical? Of course it
yeah,
is. Is it the wrong thing to do? Yes. But it's really only the wrong thing to do because we know
because
he's
she is
innocent.
wrong in this
Yeah.
incident. Yeah,
And then he turns it around on her, and he's like, oh, no, here, it's a gift. You have a gun. Happy birthday. And she's like, actually, I'm not allowed to have this gun either because I'm on probation. And he's like, not my problem. Bye. And the next scene, she's been fucking fired. But
oh
then
no, yeah,
again, much like um, the pickup artist, I really didn't want to just have her be a one-dimensional villain, and it turns it around, and we get to see her point of view of why she did what she did, why she is who she is, her
mhm.
connections that we didn't even know about to like other characters in the strip.
Oh yeah,
And
it's
by
the
the
best
end
plot
of it,
twist in the
yeah,
show.
he gets her a job, right? And they become coworkers. And like she leans into this new direction for her life, not just
Mhm.
her career. And like I've been criticized by people saying like Yeah, no, you can't just do that. You can't just cram a square peg into a round hole like that.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Absolutely. Like I wanted to uh, like a big part of leftover soup is me dealing with my, I'll be honest, phobia
Mhm.
of law enforcement.
Oh,
And that's why, like, when Jamie gets arrested for something he didn't do, and he's like, I can't go to prison. I will die in prison, or I will become something in order to survive that is not me, and that is a kind of death.
yeah.
And that's the same paranoia that I have had to deal with,
Mm,
completely unjustified, I know, but
yeah.
I have this, I've always had this idea in my head, like, oh no, I can't go to prison. If I go to prison, I'll die. Like, that's
Yeah.
always just been in my head what that is. And the redemption of Cheryl, the cop, is my way of sort of confronting that and saying, like, no, no, these are people too, you
Yeah.
know?
No, yeah, and it does a great job of that. I think her sort of arc is a really good play into it, but um it kind of goes into one of the most fascinating parts, or kind of what makes leftover soup so interesting, even with the sort of banality of how realistic and grounded and kind of non-confrontational that it
Hmm.
is the fact that half of it isn't even necessarily growth of these characters. It's just fleshing them out and
Hmm.
understanding them, trying to dive deep and having whole scenes dedicated towards kind of getting their perspective on sometimes not even necessarily what's the big plot or point of the scene, but just how they feel about certain stuff.
Hmm.
And the fact that that she can make an entire story around that, it's it's inspiring, because going back into sort of what you were saying about like fanfics, right?
Hmm.
Like, I think I mean we all know, and we're all guilty of it sometimes, of just having an idea of kind of the end goal of taking these characters or this scenario or this world and being like, I like this and I like this and I like these characters, I like this stuff, I want more of them, we're gonna do that again and we're gonna keep doing that, but not necessarily kind of diving into it or making something sort of new. A lot of the problems with, or not even necessarily a problem, but it's just something that I've noticed with a lot of dramas and romance, particularly, like one of the big criticisms that I've heard of like certain anime and stuff is, and particularly like romance animes and stuff, like I saw a guy talking about this. He's like, I hate how that every sort of it's so overly dramatic, right? And it's kind of easy to get to kind of sink into being overly dramatic in a story, because we want those emotional moments. I'm sure that even as a writer, like, you crave those big emotional moments. You want to get a big pull, a big clap, make the audience sort of think and cry and laugh and love these characters as much as you do. But the problem kind of comes when you keep wanting to do that more and more and more and more,
Hmm.
and it numbs you as a reader, that it's kind of that it really just feels kind of numbing, I guess.
Well,
There's no
it's
other way to do
there's
it.
a similar thing that happens particularly with movies.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of Star Wars. I'm thinking
Mm.
of Fast and Furious, sequelitis, where every
Ah, yeah.
subsequent thing you try to make bigger and more bombastic, and you want to make it more exciting. But the problem is you then have to still have it be in continuity with the original, which was slightly more grounded. I mean, you
Mhm.
compare again, Fast and Furious is the big example. You compare Fast and Furious 1, which is fairly grounded and realistic, all things considered, even despite the fact that it's about, people drag racing on city streets and trying to, steal DVD players from big rigs like they're modern pirates. Um, it's still fairly grounded compared to the superhero shit that happens like much later in the series.
Where they're
And it just
driving between buildings. Yeah.
yeah, and they just naturally ramped up to that because there was this pressure of each subsequent chapter of the story. We've got to go bigger. We've got to go harder. We know that thing we liked. Let's do it again, but
Yeah.
1.5 times. Like it, and eventually you get to the point. I mean, much like leveling a D&D character.
Oh yeah.
First and second and third level D&D characters are normal people. And when you get up to the end, you're, fist fighting God. It's it's a thing, but you can't have that with a more realistic, grounded human drama. You can't have that in a slice of life webcomic. You can't have that in a soap opera. People have to still be people. I think that a lot of writers, they'll have tentpole scenes in their mind, and they'll be like, okay, here's the big scene, and here's the other big scene, and here's a really cool climactic scene over here. And then the work of writing is building all the scaffolding and attaching all the sinews that'll get you from one tent pole to another. And
Yeah.
if you think of your writing in that way, you're always going to keep coming back to that same sequelitis. You're always going to keep coming back to, well, now I have to, get to a bigger tent pole.
Or if you're even weaker than that, you're only thinking of having the dialogue
Mm-hmm.
only there to get you from point A to point B in a straight line or as fast as possible because you can't. And I feel like this is the big problem. I feel is that a lot of times we devalue that path to the big
Mm-hmm.
moments, and these
Yeah.
character bits. And eh, and actually, here's another example rather. The Walking Dead is also very guilty of doing this because I mean like I haven't watched this series since like season 3 or 4. I think season 4 or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
even then it's kind of like it has you can very even back then like were understanding like the pattern of it because the problem with like what you were saying of like building the scaffolding to get from point A to point B because you have these big scenes in mind is that eventually, especially for a long running thing like a show or a webcomic where these can span years and the audience is with you every step of the way, they're eventually going to figure out the pattern and be like, oh, hey, why are we just spending a lot of time with this one character and giving them backstory? Oh, they're gonna die in the next scene, aren't they? Yep, there it is. Okay, cool. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like so boring.
Yeah. No, I think that yeah, you can get into formulas. And on the one hand, formula works, right? Like you're never
Yes.
going to be mad that, you ordered a pizza and the crust is on the bottom and then there's sauce and then toppings and then cheese. Like that's the formula you want. You're signing up for the thing, you want the thing.
There's
But
a
at the
reason
same
that
time,
tropes exist.
yeah,
Exactly.
but at the same time, like the human brain craves novelty. And when you see something coming a little too precisely, or like you start rolling your eyes and be like, oh yeah, another one of these.
Mhm.
If you don't have a connection to the characters, absolutely you roll your eyes at it. But that's
Mhm.
why you have to pay attention to the scenes in between. They can't just be scaffolding to get you from point A to point B. You have to say, well, okay, what's something else that this character has going on? What's some other reason that I should care about them? Not just that like, oh, they're really cute, but they're gonna die later, so you'll
Yeah.
be sad. It's like, no, like establish a bunch of different plot threads that any one of them you could follow up with.
Yeah.
Like my approach to writing, the idea is the Chekhov's gun, where like
Mhm.
you put a gun on the stage in Act One, and then it has to go off in Act Three. That's the Chekhov's gun thing. Um, Act One, just set up a bunch of guns all over the place, and then like let things naturally flow until Act Three. See
They'll
which
figure
guns of
out which one. You'll know
yeah
which one's the one because it's the one that's closest to the character. It's the one that's
yeah,
most convenient.
and then like if you need to simplify the narrative, you just go back to Act One and remove whichever guns didn't wind up going off.
Yeah.
You know, you
Actually,
can make it simplistic that way.
no, yeah. That is something that I've kind of learned also through writing is that it is that is always at least in the pre that's something I do like in the pre-planning phase, like
Mm,
conceptualizing a scene. Um so for it's is kind of having different routes and kind of being like, okay, I could take it in this direction or I can take it in this direction. Both are probably good, but where
mhm,
can I go with this? If I go with this direction, where would this path lead me? And where would this path lead me?
mhm,
And the way that I kind of view it is kind of viewing the characters, and it may be a bit too like simple objectifying, but
mhm,
I like to think of it as like a toolbox of characters, right? Each
mhm,
character is a tool. It can do certain things. It excels at like this group of things. It can do these things, and it can maybe and it's all right at this thing. It in a way it is also very much like a role playing game, but kind of one of the things that I've heard that some people have a problem with, like when writing, is at least so for like a fan fiction where it's like a story that has a bunch of characters. They're like, oh, there's so many characters. How are you gonna work them? Like what? What are you gonna just make a random scene where it's like, hey, this guy's here or why? And I'm like, the reason that's actually a good strength to have because the more characters that you have, works if they all do something different. They each
mhm,
have a different perspective that they can bring to a scenario. So, for instance, like they're putting up a show, right? And it's
mhm,
supposed to be these two characters. If these two characters are in this scene, then it would be like, well, this character's going to say this, and this character's going to say this, and this character's going to say this, that, and they're going to go in this direction.
mhm,
But then you say, actually, what if we switch one of those characters out with another person? How would that go? What would they think? How would they view this situation? And if they aren't, and even if they're not the best person for this scenario, they're not the most skilled at this. Well, how would they adapt? How would they work with that? How could they lean into another strength? Or maybe
yeah.
this could be a reason for them to build into something stronger. And that sort of dynamic, that kind of playing with your characters is so fascinating. And it's again like it's one of the most important things about leftover soup, and what kind of makes it such an interesting read is that you're kind of looking at these scenarios and these scenes, and it really does feel like a bunch of different pairs of eyes and minds coming together and trying to see what comes out.
Mhm,
It's just pure character chemistry, and it's so good. It's what makes it again a true slice of life because there's a few comics that are touted as slice of lives, and they don't really feel like they're people.
mhm,
And going back into kind of what we were saying about like the conflict in leftover soup, like whenever a problem arises or something like that, yes, the characters will shout and they can be very angry, but that's never all that a scene is.
Mhm.
It's more than that. It's them working through that. They're trying to figure things out. How did we get here? That's and in a way, like that is what true life is, because it's like your friend does something really stupid, you're not just going to punch them in the face
Mhm.
and then yell at them and then storm out. I mean, you could, but you'd be kind of a dick, and it wouldn't really see. You'd feel bad. They'd feel bad. There's the repercussions for these things, and but for the most part, if you find out that your friend is like in a bad situation, you'd be like, okay, like if you found out that hey, your friend is being accused of being a big flaming racist, you'd be like, wait, what the fuck? Well, I gotta talk to them. What the fuck? What's going on? Why is this
Mhm.
happening? You're not well, unless unless fuck. I'm so bad with the fucking
Hmm.
names. What's what's Max's black friend called?
Wallace.
Wallace. That's it. Like, I mean, Wallace does, but he immediately that gets shut down,
Yeah. No.
and
True
there's immediate
conflict.
repercussions for it.
Yeah. True conflict resolution always has to come from a place of understanding the other person and why they're doing what they're doing, and again, understanding the machine that powers them so that you can put in the input that you want to get the output that you want.
All
And
communication.
yeah, and if you resolve problems with another person with violence, then unless you're gonna like actually kill them and then also actually kill everybody who would object to you killing them, which is to say eventually working your way across the globe,
Yeah,
um, you are never going to really end a conflict because in their mind they're right and you just hit them and now they have to find a way to hit you back.
yeah, because they
Like
don't
you
know what's wrong. They don't
yeah.
understand why you think that they're not right.
Yeah, so you have to like understand the other person, understand why they think the way they do, why they're acting the way they do. Then you can be like not necessarily forgive and excuse them. Like there are some people who are doing things for bad reasons and you can't convince them to care about, other people because they're still just purely motivated by spite or anger or self-interest or whatever.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, like that even goes into leftover soup. That's a like whenever like Ellen or Jamie like challenge Lily on her beliefs, or Gina, like Lily's still a feminist. She
yeah.
still holds her views, but she can come to an understanding. She's like, all right, fine, I can ease up on these things. I can understand like these things, and I
Mhm,
can simmer down um, on certain things. Like,
mhm,
and even if they don't, or even if they don't do that, like they can understand. Like, Max is never going to budge the on harming animals.
mhm,
And she's never going to. But then, but at least them knowing this, they can be like, all right, well, we know not to go there, and
mhm.
we can find workarounds, like with the jellyfish thing, which I don't know. Did any vegans actually like talk to you about that, or is that
I've gotten a difference of opinion. Some people say
sure?
it's in the animal phylum that's not vegan. Other people accept what she's saying is like it doesn't have a nervous system, it doesn't feel pain. And I
I
think
understand the rationale at least.
yeah, no, the rationale is you got to dig into the why. And again,
Hmm.
like this comes to understanding the person. She's not a vegan for like weird superstitious reasons. She's a vegan because in her mind it's all about pain and pleasure. And if a jellyfish feels neither, then it doesn't count. Conversely, if you had a plant and the plant felt pain or pleasure, then she wouldn't eat it, right?
Yeah.
Because like once you understand the why, it's not hypocritical. You're like, oh no, she's consistent. It's just this is the way in which she is consistent.
Yeah. And that also has a great payoff of Jamie diving on the table to get her to
Hmm.
stop.
It's like, no, it
That's
has fish sauce in it. Yeah.
yeah. So many great bits. But
Mm,
like that's sort of the thing. And I think but that's sort of also why like this is so like on the surface. Like right, like I've been seeing a lot of people criticize like anime in particular.
mm,
I should clarify at this point. I don't watch anime at all. I like I some only I've only watched one in the last like 3 years,
you
and
should try some. I've heard it's good.
I've watched Agretzko, and I'm like, that's actually really good because it
Mm,
does similar things of being a sort of almost slice of life, like but about adulthood. And there's
hmm.
some clever things with its writing that I'm like, I need to fucking talk about it, but I'm like, but that's a future video. Stay tuned. That's coming out like in 2 years, probably. Don't worry.
Hmm.
No, but like I've had conversations about this where they're like, "Man, why are all these stories like centered around like high schoolers and like all the especially slice of life? Like they always talk. The characters are always in like high school or middle school and stuff. Like why is it always like in this age range?" And one, demographics, like the people that would be interested in anime are typically teenagers, and so it's better to
Hmm.
appeal to that sort of audience. But also, the thing is, like, in a teenage drama, there's a complete, you can do so much more because of the emotional volatility in teenagers, right?
Hmm.
And just the circumstances that they're in. Like they can't it's not like you can just walk away. In a school, you have to interact with you're bound to interact with the same people every day. You can't escape that. And so eventually drama will unfold and you're able to and because they're teenagers, they don't understand conflict resolution, and so you don't have to worry about like, oh, it's so drama. And that sort of and that kind of goes back into what we were saying before about how you end up into the cycle of just constantly upping the ante and building more and more drama on drama, and it just becomes to the point where it's just like unrealistic and you're wondering like how the hell are these guys still friends, or why
Hmm.
are they still around or whatever. The fact that leftover soup is about adults and it plays it in this way, like it makes all the world of sense that it is resolved in these ways. Because I remember talking to a friend of mine because like okay, the the entire reason that I brought this up is because I also worked on a fanfic. That's what the 10th anniversary is. 10 years ago, I made this fanfic for a comic called Bittersweet Candy Bowl, and
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and in that story, like I'm like I just want to get these. I wanted to do what I didn't realize at the time was I was creating an alternate history timeline, and I'm being
Mm.
like, just what if we make it so that they just dial it back and just stop, just talk this out, and just start learning conflict resolution. I ended up getting criticized because they're like, because some people were like, these kids aren't gonna talk like this. They're not gonna like dive into these things this way and this maturely. I'm like, well, maybe they fucking should. Maybe we should tell the teen, hey, teens reading this, this is what you should say. Don't stop bottling up those emotions and stuff. But like the fact that leftover soup is this adult. slice of life drama. Well, not
Mhm.
really drama, but dramedy, whatever you want to call it, just slice of life is so refreshing, and it's such a I consider it a great palate cleanser for for anyone who is just kind of sick of a lot of romance drama sort of stories, because they do get tiring, and even those that do involve adults don't end up, ironically, they end up having characters that don't really act like adults. They don't know how to handle conflict resolution and communication in these ways, and it never into the point where it stops feeling realistic. I think that I just want to say that leftover soup is the best example, and probably, as far as I know, the only one to do it in this way and this successfully, to show that, oh right, the problem was, going back, my sorry, a problem that my friend asked or had was with the premise of, if all these characters are just resolving the conflicts and they're not going to be doing, if there's no conflict, then it's going to be boring, then it's going to be just, then there's no story.
Mhm.
And that's such a destructive way of viewing storytelling,
Yeah, yeah,
because
no, absolutely.
yeah.
If I can talk about Forward for a bit,
Oh, go ahead.
um, Forward is sci-fi, and I intentionally wanted to make it a better world than the world we have now. I was very much
Yes.
inspired by Star Trek. So this is a world in which you can just get cosmetic surgery of any sort for free. Everybody's entitled to food and shelter and
Mm.
internet access, and everybody lives the kind of life that they want, and you don't have to work, and et cetera, et cetera. And I got criticized because a lot of people said, like, oh, you can't have a good story in a utopia because in a utopia there's no conflict. And I said, like,
That's the premise
no.
of Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly.
For one.
I had, like, somebody had the hot take, and I was honestly like mad when I heard it. They were like, "Oh, it was so great when Gene Roddenberry died because Gene Roddenberry didn't want there to be conflict, and as soon as he went away, then we were able to have real good, exciting Star Trek." And I was like,
First of
"Well,
all, fuck you.
yeah, yeah, like incorrect." But like my thing with Utopia is it's like mathematical infinity.
Mm,
There's never such a thing as infinite. In math, infinity is something you are moving towards. It's an arrow, not a destination.
mm,
And so a utopia isn't 100% perfect all the time. It's just better than now. And similarly, a
mm.
dystopia isn't, everything is shit forever. It's like worse than now.
Yeah.
That's all it really is. Is a utopia is better than now, a dystopia is worse than now.
Or at
And
least it's
there
the worst that we can conjure up right now.
yeah.
Think of it.
And and like dystopias, stories in dystopias can still have like moments of hope, moments of beauty and joy.
Mm.
And similarly, like absolutely a utopia can still have conflict and like problems with it. Like, okay, here's an example. Us, in comparison to a medieval peasant, we live in a utopia. It
Mm.
is tough for us. It's hard for us. But any medieval peasant will look at us and be like, you have air conditioning? You can talk to people a world away? You have been to the moon? Like, they would lose their minds.
And
And they would say, like, oh, you have like all these wonderful things. Your lives are so great. You live in a utopia. It must be heaven. There's no conflict. And like, I think you can agree. No, there's some pretty shitty conflict here. It's just different conflict because it's conflict that they haven't invented or imagined yet.
as long as
Right?
there are humans, there will always be conflict. And
Mhm.
honestly, like, the idea of what a true utopia, the only way to not even not build a utopia, but rather the only way that you can truly get rid of all conflict in the world is by uh, essentially being the Borg. Like that is
Mhm.
by having a one hive mind. There is no conflict. There's no difference in opinion. So there is no reason to change.
Yeah. So if you're saying, "Oh, I can't have conflict if my characters act reasonably," like, I'm sorry, you're just a bad writer. Like, if the
Yeah,
only way that you can have a plot is if everyone involved is an idiot, then like write a better plot, you know?
yeah,
I assure you conflict still exists.
yeah, yes, exactly. And I mean, and like that is one thing that I've kind of understood with as in my writing, right?
Mhm.
Is because there you're right. The entire point of like a slice of life or doing this sort of drama, like or a low, we'll call it a low stakes drama rather.
Mhm.
I feel like that's a better word. Um, is that you're kind of trying it makes the drama even more compelling because
Mhm.
it shows in a way that even when it shows an innately human and realistic outcome that even when like we do the best that we can and we say the right things, we do the right moves and there's nothing wrong, bad things are still going to happen.
Mhm.
Sometimes the worst outcome will take place. The difference is just how do we come back from that? How do we respond? How do and that's where the interesting aspects come from. It's
Mhm.
why kind of building up characters and having this difference and if we'll excuse the buzzword the diversity of opinions,
Mhm.
like that's where that really becomes interesting and it's so valuable in any story or world that you're trying to build.
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I I think that something as simple as here's a character and they want something. They want a
Mm,
glass of water. You can write a story about that. Like, there has to be something that your character wants and a way in which they go about getting it. And you have to establish here's the world as it is. There's a tap, there's glasses. This
mm,
person wants water. They need water to live. Here's how they would go about getting it. And then you introduce any sort of improbability but not impossibility into that story. It's like, oh, the water's been turned off, or oh, I don't have any clean glasses. Whatever.
or
Anything.
even just it's over there.
Yeah. And like, you can then show them adapting and changing and doing something different to solve their problem.
Mm,
Like, if we just everything has to be action all the time, everything has to be like fist fights and murder mysteries and like the most salacious stuff, you're just preemptively Fast and Furious tenning like your story. Like, no, you have to start with Fast and Furious 1 or ideally 0 where they're learning to drive. Like, chill.
alternatively, if that is the tone that you set first and you do manage to make that steep climb, it is an interesting comic. It's a
Oh,
very
sure.
interesting story, but it's just not realistic.
Exactly, exactly. Like I mean there's plenty of anime, for example.
Mm.
Like the big example of power scaling like that, I would say, is Dragon Ball Z.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Cuz you start off with here's a little magic monkey boy and he can kick real good, and then by the end of it, again, fist fighting god, because like ratchet up, ratchet up, ratchet up. And I'm not going to say Dragon Ball is a bad universe or bad storytelling or whatever, but it is what it is. And it's hard to then dial that back again
Mm.
and be like, okay, now let's go back to a slice of life. Let's show them raising their kids. Let's show them having real problems. when it's like, well, he has real problems, but also he could punch the planet in half.
Yeah.
It's like
Or at
it
least without delving into parody, at least.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, no, to get to a slice of life and to stay on a slice of life without ratcheting up, you have to find a way to make the story interesting that isn't and then a bigger thing happened.
Yeah, and it requires a lot of restraint in
Hmm.
order to pull off exact perfectly. And this is an actual thing that I've kind of that I've experienced in my life. Like, and I'm sure that you've probably had this happen too, where like a friend or someone like hits you up and they're like, "Hey, I got this cool idea in the world." And it sounds dog shit. You're kind of like, "Oh, yeah, that does that's interesting." And the only thing you can say is it could work. It dependent on the execution. And I'm
Hmm.
like, because that's in reality that is the truth. It is the only because everything you could, like as mentioned, you could have the dumbest idea in the world. You
Hmm.
could break every rule in storytelling. You could just say, screw it. We're going to go at 10. We're going to start at 10 and we're going to boost it to 100 and we're going to keep building into it. You could do that. You
Hmm.
could just say screw it, and it could work. But if only if your execution is right. If you can find a way to make it interesting, and it's why like people are like why people enjoy a lot of the things that we otherwise would like raise our noses at and kind of poo poo. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, yes, these stories like Leftover Soup or Forward or even Star Trek, like, yeah, they're not centered around just pure conflict and constant drama,
Mm.
but there's still something to be gained. There's something to be learned. There's something in there that makes it interesting and valuable for you as the reader to enjoy.
Yeah. Like you were talking about ideas and how to flesh out an idea.
Mm,
And I, even more than I am naturally a writer, I'm naturally an idea guy. I'm
mm,
constantly coming up with new stuff. I'm making games. I'm coming up with ideas for TV shows, movies, video games, board games, role playing games. Like something like that pops up in my head, like I would say on average at least once a week.
that's perfect.
And the thing that I have learned, and that every creative professional eventually learns, is ideas aren't worth that much.
Yeah.
It's like,
Sometimes you just gotta let it go.
yeah, like any person who works in like actual media, like say video games for
Mm,
example, anybody who actually makes video games knows that there's somebody who's going to approach you and say, I have the greatest idea for a video game. It's going to be the best video game ever made. All I need is someone to write it and program it and make all the art assets.
yeah.
And it's like, nah, you got nothing. Like the real challenge is, can you figure out how to do it? Can you figure out how to constrain it within your equivalent of 4 panels? Can
Mhm.
you make it work with the resources you have? And do you have the willpower to see it through? Can you
Yes.
force yourself to do the boring parts? Like that's the real challenge, not coming up with a cool concept. Coming up with a cool concept happens every day.
You can ask any 10-year-old. They got plenty of awesome ideas.
Oh yeah. And
But
yeah, no, absolutely. Like when it comes to a slice of life, a slice of life story,
mm,
uh, the challenge is not can I make some interesting characters and have them have conflict? I could come up with a script that generates that. It just like cycles together a bunch of personality traits and character traits and then says, okay, and then
Just Mad Libs it.
they have to build a log cabin. Or oh, and then they have to stop a sink from flooding. Like whatever. They have to have some sort of challenge. That's
Mm.
not the interesting part. The interesting part is, can you set up like something that has interesting characters, have them interact in a way that is consistent with their character, but also shows that those characters can learn and grow? Can you have them solve their problems in an unconventional way?
Mm.
And in my mind, there's really two ways to write any scene. Um, like coming back to the idea of statting out your characters and saying,
Mm.
oh, this character is good at this but bad at that. And let's say you have, just as an example, a stereotypical barbarian and a wizard, and that's your balanced party, a barbarian and a wizard. So the two kinds of challenge you can have is the barbarian encounters a problem that he can solve with brute strength. And so the challenge is, can he bulk up and get strong enough in order to hit it hard enough? And can he be good at the thing that he's good at and get better at it? Or the alternate formula is, can the barbarian use something that he has learned from the wizard and like, oh, you taught me this one little cantrip. Can I use that to solve my problem when my strength fails? And I think that the second plot is more interesting than the first, but both are interesting in their own way because both show the details of the character, namely, they're good at one thing and bad at another thing.
Yes. And there's things that you can do. Um,
Mhm.
One thing, actually, here's an interesting question because I found about writing characters because I've kind of noticed this in certain things where one part of character writing that I've picked up on in certain writers is there's a weird focus. There's more focus on aspects or
Mm.
like that sort of thing to a character. Like it's not just where like say like to compare it to leftover soup. Let's say like it's like Jamie, like he's a chef. He is socially inept. He's an awkward dude. He's kind of naive, but and also he makes games. Like
Mhm.
there's tends to be certain people will tend to write in a way where they're like, I want to add that they can do this or that they can do that. Or
Mhm.
they do that, or they have this happen, or this happen, and it never really and it more just feels like that, like you're just adding things onto a character rather than expanding them, right? You know what
Mhm.
I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, having a character learn something and grow and then demonstrate that learning and growth by using the thing that they have learned in order to solve a problem is that's core to a lot of storytelling that's really engaging. Is you want to show somebody who's like, they're going to be introduced to something again like in act 1 and then they're able to use it in act 3, right?
Yeah.
Like the example I gave of the barbarian. Like you have what seems like a simple little throwaway character scene around a campfire where the wizard is teaching him this useless little cantrip, and then 3 scenes later he's using it to save the day. That's that's a really engaging plot because it shows a character learning and growing and changing in order to surmount an obstacle.
Yeah. But the problem that I've seen is more like that sort of development kind of all happening in Act 1, and
Mm.
then it never kind of gets expanded on later, or it doesn't really feel like it lasted as the story goes on, like these
Mm.
little moments. And it more or even worse, where they like add where an aspect is added onto a character, like they have an interest, but it doesn't really matter, or it's just kind of there to make them feel more, to make you kind of feel more attached to them. like
Mhm.
uh like say uh, an example of this was, we were reading this one comic, and there's the main couple, right? Character A and character B, and it's
Mhm.
the classic love triangle tango. They are the two developed characters. You've been with them the entire time, and all of a sudden, here comes character C. Character C comes in, and so we have to add, and she's vying in to get in with character A. How do you get that? But obviously, the audience is not going to care about character C. She just came in here. Who does she think that she is?
Mm.
So you got to add stuff to her. Okay, well, they had a prior relationship, maybe a childhood friend, or they, and she's also pretty, so they like her, and she's also this, and she's also that, and she's also this. And it all just sort of feels like it's only there so that you can feel sympathetic, so that this love triangle will work. And you kind of, even though you know character C ain't got a chance. She's
Yeah.
nothing. She just came in here. She ain't shit.
Yeah.
Like how how can you better disguise that, or better implement this sort of idea that in a way where it's less apparent?
How do you obfuscate what you're doing so that people don't see? Well, I mean, all fiction writing is a sort of magic trick. You know, you gotta be waving your hand over here and saying abracadabra so they don't see what you're doing under the cloak. You know,
Yeah.
um, one of the best things that I ever wrote about story structure is from I had a book series called the Guide to Life series,
Hmm.
and it was 5 different competing advice books called The Paladin's Guide to Life, The Rogue's Guide to Life, The Barbarian's Guide to Life, The Necromancer's Guide to Life, and then The Bard's Guide to Life. And they really work well as a set because each of them is this very simple little book of proverbs, but they conflict with each other and they give very different advice from a very different point of view, because the advice that the barbarian gives you in the Barbarian's Guide to Life is profoundly different from the advice you just got in the Paladin's Guide to Life.
Yeah.
And that goes back into what I was saying of like triangulating and like getting different perspectives on things and getting a more rounded picture of the world. But one of the best things that I wrote was in the Bard's Guide to Life, where she talks about the so-called 3-act structure. And in a larger sense, the 3-act structure is the way that almost all storytelling is done, whether it be a knock knock joke or a grand epic fantasy tale or a sitcom or whatever. Step 1 is establish the world, establish what is possible and what is impossible. If
Hmm.
you have your setting and it's slice of life, it's realistic, then you want to be like, the characters are in this place, they have this socioeconomic status, they work at this location, there are no vampires and werewolves. You
Yeah.
establish what the world is. And then step 2 is you establish something that is probable. It's like, oh no, we're probably going to be evicted. Oh no, I'm probably going to lose my job. Oh no, Goliath is probably going to beat David because Goliath is bigger and stronger.
Hmm.
And then act 3, you show something happen that is improbable but not impossible, something that contradicts step 2 but not step 1. So you show David beating Goliath. You show, oh, we've pulled something out of our asses at the last second, saved the rec center, whatever.
Yeah.
You've saved the day and you've triumphed over the odds. Because if you don't triumph over the odds, people are going to be bored because like Yeah, of course the big guy beat up the little guy. The little guy's little. Like, who? Why would I? Why would I care? But also, you can't go against what is possible, because if all of a sudden at the last moment you have vampires and werewolves pop up and, oh, this character is secretly immortal this whole time, it's like, well, now you're like, what's the point? This is all just Calvin Ball. Like, no, nothing makes any sense. You have to establish a world, and then you have to have the improbable happen. You have to have the man bites dog story, but have it in that world, you know, because that's what's important. People want to see something unlikely but possible happen. That is what is interesting. That is what is engaging with a story. You don't want to see the likely thing happen because that's boring, and you don't want to see the impossible thing happen because that's incoherent. You want something that is possible but improbable.
I haven't heard of these. Where are those? I don't.
Oh,
That's
the
actually a
Guide to
blind
Life
spot.
books?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Social media sucks for self promotion, because
It
I
really
swear when
does.
when these were coming out, I was like posting about them, tweeting about them every damn day. They're all available on Amazon, and you can get the physical copies there. They're reasonably priced, I think. Makes a great gift, says so right on it. But if you don't want to drop the cash on a physical book, you can read them ahead of time by signing up to my Patreon, patreon.com/tailsteak. That supports everything I do. And when you sign up, even for as little as $1 a month, you get instant access to PDF versions of those books, as well as other books that I have written.
Perfect ad read. Thank you. But this has just been a great time. I think we're actually going on to 2 hours. I'm sorry if we've been stretching on long.
Oh, I'm assuming you're gonna edit this down to a snappy 15.
Hold on. No, not on your life, buddy. I've I have actually we this channel is, if there's anything that anyone should expect out of this channel, it is that we do not care at all about video length. We haven't done a full Quentin Reviews 12-hour video. I'm
Mm,
not that bad. But we did do a 3-hour one, and
yikes.
that was the only one where I'm like, okay, we may have gone too far. And
Mm.
then I was like, well, what if we just cut out all the commentary bits and it's just the scripted parts? And I actually got to 1 hour 40 minutes, and I'm like, that that's okay, and that's the line. 2 hours is more than fine by me, you know.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I'll abruptly stop talking then.
Oh no, it's a very big pleasure. Honestly, this is probably the most we've really talked about. I think this is probably the one interview where we've talked the most about like writing and actual like comic creation in that aspect. One thing I oh, but I did want to ask one thing. How the hell? Well, actually, let me preface this a bit. For the One of the biggest things about leftover soup that honestly I'm almost saddened that it's not going to be, that it can't be appreciated anymore, is the fact that it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right?
Yep.
Or yeah. And it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday the entire time. How long was it? Like how
It
many
was
years?
exactly 1,000 strips. The
No, well,
very
that's
mhm.
important. That I know. That
Okay.
is still amazing. But how many years was it though?
That would be, I believe, around 7 years.
Jesus. Yeah, 7 years. Each one, except for the one that we mentioned being 4 panels, each one is a very formulaic. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7 years straight. Never missed a single update.
You
No
goddamn right.
guest comics, no hiatus, no breaks,
Hmm.
no sleep. Like I that's no one has done that. I have not heard anyone fucking, even Cyanide and Happiness, yeah, which had relied on like guest comics and gimmicks and four different artists to keep on schedule. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that Leftover Soup never fucking broke. It goes to a part that you brought up that I feel like is so pivotal to making a story, a comic, or anything like this, where it's a long sort of project, and especially going into it, you know that this is going to take a fair portion of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of willpower and dedication is something that even the worst, trashiest webcomic in the world, you have to admire. You have to have respect for it. And just big, big celebration. And also, yes, the fact that somehow, some way, how the hell did you get it to exactly 1,000? Who you didn't? When did you plan for that? At what point did you think, "Hey, wait a second, we're getting to a big number.
Well,
It'd be really cool."
yeah, no, that was always the plan. Was the thing is because my first webcomic back in the day, 1/0, that ran for exactly strips. And then Leftover Soup, I was like, okay, I'll do the same thing. How hard could it be? Do it a second time. So I did another webcomic that was exactly 1,000 strips. And the current webcomic that I'm working on that I've mentioned, Forward, the sci-fi, I'm currently, most recent update as of this recording was number 402. And I've made it clear to everyone, I intend for this one to also run for exactly 1,000 strips. I do one thing and I do it well.
Honestly, that is remarkable to me because I've seen it so many times, and there's so many comics, and I've been guilty of this myself, where like you have an idea, you want this story, and you just keep you have so many ideas, and it's
Uh-huh.
impossible, especially when you're in the thick of it for as long as you are, just being like, yes, we're gonna keep going, we're gonna have you have so much more to say. There's like
Uh-huh.
so many more possibilities that we can go to. There's just one more thing, just one more idea, and how you can fit that into try restraining yourself to make it where it doesn't drag any further or any shorter than what you intended. Like that is actually very remarkable. I got it.
Yeah, like
It's
the
the big
web
thing.
comic field. My compatriots, my competitors, my peers,
Yes.
like there are thousands upon thousands of web comics, and the vast majority of them eventually like stop updating or they go on indefinite hiatus or whatever. That's just the natural life cycle of a thing. And
Mhm.
then meanwhile, I come in and I'm like, I drop not one, but two webcomics that had regular updates, exactly 1,000 of them with no hiatuses. And I'm currently like on another one. I'm 2.5 times I've done this now. And I'm just like, what? Like it's hard? But
Am I
like
saying I'm better than you?
but the thing is that's the one strength that I really have is I can force myself to do a thing. Like I mentioned that the art for me is unnatural, the writing is natural,
Right.
but like the real core thing, the real thing that's like powers me as a person is I say I'm gonna do a thing, and then I will fist fight God himself to get it done because like that's the one quality that I know I can bring to the table. I might not always have the best punchline. I might not always have the best art. I might sometimes mess something up and do something that's unpopular or even offensive. But the
Mm.
one thing you can count on is you come back next week and I'll have another comic for you because that's what I am.
Yeah. Honestly, like yeah, that is exactly it. Like that is one thing that I really admired reading Leftover Soup when it was updating page by page, and I think it's something that it's kind of why like I pointed out that yeah each page has a joke. It's because there's still something. There's always going to be something, even if you don't like the like let's be frank here. The art is not great. It's there's plenty of people. There's always someone better than you.
Sure.
No matter in what field or what you do.
Hmm.
But the thing, but the pro about Leftover Soup, and it goes with every comic, and it's a fact or it's an aspect of webcomics or it's why I highlight like putting a joke on every page because that's an aspect of webcomics that is almost required. You have to leave something. And yeah, the the saying is the most important part. If you don't like this page or you're like iffy on it, even if you don't laugh at the joke, don't worry. Come back tomorrow. There's another one right there. And
Hmm.
maybe you'll laugh at that one, or maybe not. But hopefully you'll get something out of it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's in every sort of that should be a part of literally everything that we make.
Hmm.
And like even movies that are supposed to be isolated stories and that have these big endings. That's one of the biggest problems of sequelification and sequel baiting, why people hate it so much, is because it's like, oh, there isn't this sort of there isn't a finality to it. You don't have that final joke. You're just like, come back tomorrow. The joke will be there in the next one.
Hmm.
Right? But another thing is like, yeah, the fact that it is over and that they've made more. I have seen some that do. Like one of the best ones that we have actually covered, Stand Still, Stay Silent, is a comic that is finished. It's actually done,
Hmm.
and I feel I feel like there may be a big fear in an artist and writers where they don't want it to end, or they feel like if they end it now, like what are they going to do? Like what?
Hmm.
Why we can't stop now because then you basically pull the rug out from under yourself. But having a story end is so important
Hmm.
just because, and I'm sure you've seen this, you've experienced this, and I mean you literally talked about it of like comics and stories going on indefinite hiatus.
Hmm.
Uh, one story that I will always think of, and is actually kind of relevant nowadays. Don't worry, nothing out right now, but there was this one fan comic that I read on Tumblr, and it was so good. It did apparently it did have an ending, but or they had to write it out, but I'm still sad that it's never like fully realized. Is a story called Zistopia, which is a Zootopia fanfic about a sort of play off of Zootopia.
Hmm.
That's Zistopia, based on the original premise of predators being a or carnivores rather being a oppressed class, so to
Hmm.
speak, and it's so fucking good. I'm like, this is actually a really interesting story. And you just one day, they said the immortal words that I've heard that just kills everyone. Hey, we are looking for other artists. Can anyone help us help finish this? And it's all over there. Even
Hmm.
if you get another hand in it, it's just nope, no, it's dead. You're never
Yep.
going to recover. And but that being said, there is something it being able to have a satisfying note at the very least it gives. readers like satisfaction, and that's at the end of the day, that's really all that we can hope for as creators, as writers and artists. It's leaving you as the reader or consumer, whatever you want to be called, satisfied, happy, or something. Leaving you
Yeah.
with anything to take with you. And and I'm glad that we were able to see it. And you can see it too, as Leftover Soup is, as far as writing, as recording this, is still up. The domain will not expire, but who knows? I swear, you will not believe this, Tailsteak. I once had an interview with a guy named Gabe Swore, and
Mhm.
he's an animator. He's an actual like Nickelodeon animator. He worked on a couple shows, and he had a
Uh-huh.
web comic. He had this whole site with a bunch of other artists, and I'm like, oh yeah. And we were talking about the history of this, and I'm like, yeah, go watch this. Fucking after, like a week after we recorded that interview, I was like, "Oh, thank you for keeping the site up. You know, this stuff is worth archiving because a lot of these, a lot of comics and stories just end up getting eaten in the ether. As much as we like to say that everything on the internet stays there, some things just don't. Especially if not enough people are watching or caring enough to actually go look at
Mhm.
it. And so I was like, go read the comics. It's all great. Next week, the freaking domain went down, and she never fucking came
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
I'm like,
No,
you
no.
son of a bitch, you ruined me.
I told the new orders to start showing up. Don't make me a liar!
Well, I mean, I can't promise that I won't like drop off the face of the earth tomorrow. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in my life.
Who
But
knows? I mean,
if you out there listening to this want to help keep my domain name up, I do that with money. So, hey, remember that patreon.com/tailsteak I mentioned? You can go there and help to preserve internet history.
yes, indeed. One of the best webcomics ever.
Thank you.
And and I mean, okay, one more. Okay.
Okay, head
How
on
the hell
over
did
to
you get this?
patreon.com/tailsteak and
Please come to our game!
How
you
did you
can.
fund this? How did you actually do this? I don't know how, because I could not look. I found leftover soup by googling web comics. I swear to God, I never seen an ad for it. I was never fucking pitched to me by anyone in the world. I just randomly stumbled on it. How the hell did you start this?
Uh, honestly, like a lot of my readers came from my very, very first web comic, like I mentioned, 1/0. That was back during the heyday, the very early beginning of webcomics. That was back in the year 2000. So, as of this recording, a quarter of a goddamn century ago. And I swear this was not the reason that I did it, but I stylized the title of the comic 1/0 as the numeral 1/0, which meant that I was on the top of a whole lot of alphabetical. And
Yeah.
that was the seed, as far as I am concerned, of my popularity. Everything else is just people continuing to follow me.
Perfect SEO before, it was a thing.
Complete coincidence, yeah.
Perfect. Uh, that's awesome. Was that I have to ask, was that some 42? Was that's the only thing I can remember. Wait,
Um, no, I
I,
don't think so.
I remember. All I remember was that I there were you were talking there was some author's notes or something about like a previous web comic, and there was just a joke about some 42, and I'm like, oh, I should read this. I I couldn't. I was not going to. Sorry.
No, that's fair. That's fair. No, I didn't have anything called Sum 42. Like I have done a bunch of other stuff. I mean, like I said, I have like a lot of art out there. I have a lot of other comics out there. I have books that I've written. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all just, have ideas and then just buckle down and make them. And one of the best incentives to yourself to, uh, get your act together and get your willpower together and do it is by publicly stating, hey, I'm going to do the thing. Like sometimes that's enough to keep you going, is knowing that, oh,
You
if
made a
I mess
promise.
this up, like other people will be disappointed. Like that's all there is to it, is like have a plan, tell people about your plan, and well, now you got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta hold your own feet to the fire sometimes.
Hmm.
But that being said, thank you very much for joining, and all the links will be in the description. And please go check them out and support our boy, this snowball of a man. And hopefully, we will see you next time. Go check it out. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.